Hello and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. I am Sir Galahad, and today we have a very special podcast with none other than Jackson90, a very interesting, intelligent guy who happens to be a EMT, emergency medical technician, paramedic of sorts, I suppose, and an ambulance operator. And he was working and is working in Italy, in Lombardy, which we're calling this podcast the Battle of Lombardy. Which, as you may or may not know, is the worst outbreak of COVID-19/coronavirus on Earth, I think. Most cases, most deaths, etc. So very, very intense firsthand frontline experience with coronavirus. He's also had, I think he said, close to 100 hours of training, professional medical training in coronavirus. So, of course, on this conspiracy theory server, we hear all kinds of takes on COVID and corona. But rarely do we get to hear from someone who's had as much firsthand and professional experience. So I think we're all going to learn a lot from this, and I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you for joining me, live audience. Thank you for everyone joining us on YouTube, Podcast Addict, Podbean, or any of our other platforms. Before we get started, we are the Roundtable Discord server. Make sure you join the Roundtable Discord server by Googling Roundtable Discord, or simply going to Disboard, right, Disboard, and then go through the politics or conspiracy sections to find us. We are the white charging knight on horseback on a black background. That is our symbol. We have a website called theroundtablediscord.com. We are also on all social media such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, Tumblr, Periscope, you name it, right? We have a Minecraft server and much, much more. So the best way to find us is to simply connect with us on the server where we do these podcasts. So that being said, today is a very special day because my good friend and comrade and Knight of the Round Table, Mr. Magical Album, is going to conduct the interview and give me a break today, and Shogun a break. So basically, Magical Bum has prepared some questions. Thank you, Magical Album. I'll just call you Magic or Magical, for agreeing to do this. And thank you, Mr. Jackson, for being on the show. So without further ado, I will hand the microphone over to Magical to conduct the interview, and when he is ready, he'll let us know, and then there'll be an open question and answer period for other people as well. So thank you, Mr. Jackson. Thank you, Magical. Whenever you're ready, feel free to start.
Thank you. I'm honored and glad to be here. So, hi, Jackson. How you doing?
I'm okay. It's my day off.
That's good. That's good. How's your family doing right now?
Good. My father actually lives in France, and he says he's doing good. He lives in Alsace, eastern France. My family lives like next door, but I haven't met them since mid-February, and I haven't also seen my girlfriend since mid-February.
Well, our thoughts and prayers are out to them. I wish the best to them, but I'm glad that they're doing pretty good. So tell me, what do you do, and what country are you from?
Italy. I was born in Lombardy. It's the region around Milan, whereas Galahad said the worst outbreak of coronavirus occurred. I'm an ambulance driver, an EMT, or emergency medical technician. I'm not a paramedic. The EMT is a step under the paramedic. I was a volunteer for the Red Cross for 3 years, between 2010 and 2013, and then I became a professional EMT, and I've been working as a professional EMT for the regional EMS since then.
Wow. Well, let me be the first to thank you for your service. Especially during a pandemic like this, we need people like you. We need more people like you. So thank you for everything that you do from the bottom of my heart and from everyone here. So tell me about your experiences as an EMT in Italy since COVID has kicked off. Tell me how it has been for you.
It happened all of a sudden. We were watching the news, of course, so we knew that the virus was already in Italy, but reports did not look that bad, or at least we didn't think that it could get as bad as it was in mid-March and late March, especially. It happened like from night to morning. In 12 hours, the situation changed completely. I don't know why. I don't think I have an answer to that. All we know is that one day we were dealing with elder people who had back pain, and the day after we had hundreds of people rushing at the hospital with fever, coughing, and pneumonia.
Huh. So you were on call pretty much when things really started to kick.
Got completely caught off guard. We were not prepared. We had no training of sorts. I mean, we did have a very basic training when it comes to protection devices, gloves and masks, but we had no real training to deal with an unknown infectious disease, even though we have been dealing with those kind of diseases for, well, since we become EMTs. Tuberculosis, for example. I had to take prophylaxis for meningitis 3 times because we transported people who were later found positive to meningitis, which can kill you in 24, 48 hours.
Wow.
But those were extremely rare. 3 times we had 3 cases of meningitis, personally, me, in 10 years. But when you have 10 cases of coronavirus per day to deal with, that's a whole nother story. There's a lot of room to make mistakes.
Absolutely, there is. And so you're mentioning like everyone got caught off guard, right? So how has this affected you and the other health workers? Like, you guys working longer hours? Has anyone gotten sick? Has anyone not returned? Are like any of your employees rebelling? What's the current working environment for you?
We rarely overworked. It wasn't necessary. Italian ambulances are usually manned by 3 people: a driver, a nurse. I'm talking about the public ambulances. A driver, a nurse, and a doctor. In my case, it was me and 2 other EMTs. What happened is that in order to avoid grouping up in the same room all day, which is basically what we do, they cut 1 person from the team. So we were manning ambulances with 2 EMTs. That was a way to prevent, spreading the disease around more than it already was. So
But doesn't that also like put more stress on your workload? Does it?
Indeed, yeah, that was the first part. But that didn't happen until mid to late May, as far as I remember. So we were manning ambulances with 3 people during the initial stages of the emergency. So we were dealing with it. Some people are not easy to lift from the bed, and you need strong arms. And if you are,
Oh yeah.
man, well, that's one story. But if you are 2 people and the other one is a 20 years old girl, with no disrespect, but you see, that's a whole nother story.
No, absolutely. I went to nursing school for a little bit of time, so I know exactly how female nurses like to put off all the heavy patients on you. But I mean, but that situation is absolutely, it's not fair, and I can see how that would be a lot of a lot of strain not only on yourself, but like because you're taking less precautions. You're not taking as much precautions you should be. You're more worried about not dropping or hurting this person. And so I want to ask you, I know you're bound by HIPAA, so I don't want you to have to talk about any specific patients, but could you just run through how one of your typical COVID calls would have been like? Let's say you got a call right now and you're headed out to COVID. How do they usually look like?
Well, when we get a call, we hear an alarm from the computer. So we click on it, we flag it, and the printer gives us the filter, the telephone filter. So the guy at the dispatch operator asks questions to the patient, and according to the answers they give you this filter. So technically, you already know what you're going to deal with, but this is not always the case. In the case of coronaviruses, it's a patient with with a very important breathing difficulty or dyspnea, that is the correct word, fever, weakness, and usually there's a little note the dispatch operator adds: suspected COVID-19, use protection devices.
Okay. So like when you go to one of these people that had COVID, Do they just seem like normal patients? Do they just seem like you're picking up grandma who's got the flu, or are they convulsing, shaking? Are they, in a coma? Are they in any weird state that is what you're not used to seeing?
Yeah, they all look the same. And this is amazing because the first thing they teach you in EMT training is no call is ever going to be the same. All calls are going to be different for many reasons. In the case of coronavirus patients, they all look the same. And when I say looking the same, I mean their skin color is similar. It tends to be brownish or grayish. And that's, I guess, because of the oxygen, of the breathing difficulty and lack of oxygen in the blood. They look very weak, as if they haven't been sleeping for days. You can hear the noises coming up from their lungs, as if there is water in them. And usually, when you hear that sound, there are very high chances the patient is going to ICU, intensive care unit.
Okay, so wow, that's a lot to digest. So, okay, you pick up this patient that looks like they're on the brink of death. You rush them to the hospital. What does the ICU look like right now at your hospital?
At the moment, the ICU is almost empty. As far as I know, there are 14 beds. Yeah, 14 beds. And last time I talked to a doctor, who works in the ICU, he said there were only 4 beds left. No, sorry, there were only 4 patients left in the ward. So it's definitely getting better after 3 months.
That's good. That's really nice to hear. It's always nice to hear good news like that. So you mentioned earlier, and like right now, you talk to doctors and stuff like that, and you said you had training. You said, I don't know if I misquote you, please correct me, but 100 hours of training on COVID. Can you tell us who taught you about COVID, and what did you learn from this training time that they gave you on COVID?
The training happened with videos and protocols, written protocols over emails, because for obvious reason we couldn't meet in the training facility, and nurses and doctors couldn't come to train us on the field, or at least train us in a training room. So we had to do it over the internet. We started to receive the first protocols and procedures in late February, which were based on the indications of the World Health Organization, which taught me when and how to use a mask, what to wear, what to sanitize, how to deal with COVID patients, what symptoms to look for, what parameters to check for. Oxygen, of course, blood pressure, not always, and heart rate. The training basically never stopped, because every 2 or 3 days we had a new protocol and a new procedure to read, because it was a learning by doing situation, not just for us on the field, but even for the regional healthcare authorities and the regional government.
I can understand that. I can definitely understand the bureaucracy and chaos that can go through instructing people through emails, specifically, talking about my experience in government work. So that's really interesting. So you guys, there's no Zoom class, no Discord channel. It was just emails exchanged. And they taught you about protocol. Things are changing. People are learning on the fly. That's true. So my next question is, what did you learn? Like, what did they teach you specifically about COVID? Not only just the symptoms and signs, but of the actual virus itself. Did you learn anything through the emails, or was it just more practical stuff based at what you need to learn as an EMT?
Yeah, it was more practical stuff, but what the message that we could read in all the procedures and all the protocols and all the rather informal emails we received from the authorities was to fear the virus as much as we could, to fear it in order to be concentrated and fight it. So as to avoid people taking an easy stance, like, yeah, we don't need a mask, we don't need gloves, and maybe get infected. So the first thing they said is, be scared about it, but don't panic. but know what your enemy is and what it does to people. So that was the first step.
Okay, interesting. Now, when we were talking in the VC earlier, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said that this is one of the worst viruses that has affected humanity. Um, Now, with all the conflicting data that's been presented to the masses within mainstream media or independent media, whomever you get your news from, and the fact is, like what we like you said yourself, you called yourself a fluer, a person who just thought it was, it's just the flu, it's just the flu, or a flu bro. Was that what it was, flu bro?
Flu bro.
Oh, that's a cool term. I like that. So tell me, if you were a flu bro. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. What makes this virus so dangerous, in your opinion? What has changed since then?
Initially, we received the news as everybody else on Earth from the medias. We have all sorts of medias, all sorts of newspapers leaning on all political sides. So I can say confidently say that Italy has a very wide, many sources of information. So you can, if you read all newspapers, you can eventually make your mind up. Most newspapers, most of them, if not all, including government officials that you're supposed to trust, say that we had nothing to worry about. That the common flu, the seasonal flu, kills many more people than what had been reported in China. The COVID-19 related deaths in China. They said we have much more dangerous diseases such as meningitis, as I said earlier, tuberculosis, and many other diseases we don't even know about that could kill you in a couple of days. What changed is that on 25th of February, I had my first direct experience in the red zone. I was the first EMT in my province to be sent in the first red zone south of Milan. And that I was a flu bro in the morning. I came back and said, go buy all the FFP2 3 masks you can find on Amazon.
Fuck, you got woke pretty quick, huh? Like it was
Yeah.
something you've never experienced before. And that's saying something as an EMT. Now, I don't know how it is over there in Italy. I hope you have a very quiet and quaint town. But here in SoCal, EMTs, I mean, we've got freeways, crazy people, meth addicts, and all that stuff. They deal with a lot of crazy stuff, I didn't want to become an EMT because I personally believe I would be subjected to PTSD from seeing such traumatic things. And yet, here you are, an EMT, saying that this is the worst thing that you've ever seen, and it's changed your view.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Yeah, we've been dealing with all sorts of calls, from the drunk guy to extreme car crashes that I still cannot explain up to this day. After years, I'm still thinking about some car crashes with decapitations or people cut in half. And I say, how the hell did this crash happen? How is it possible that people can destroy themselves in cars like this while they're texting on the phone? I mean, I thought that people were dying a very stupid way in many cases. Not blaming them, and I'm sorry, of course, because people die. I'm never happy about it. But I was thinking, man, these people are dying in a very stupid way. That's a Darwin Award. And then coronavirus came. And what this virus taught me is that it doesn't really matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your opinions are, what your skin color is, what your government says or doesn't say, what your political system is or political belief is. This virus doesn't discriminate. It's a very democratic virus that hits everybody, irrespective of age, color, or whatever.
Didn't have my vote.
Yeah, well,
Well,
I
so
remember that people initially here, most people were flu bros. There were some people who became immediately paranoid about it. And of course, now I say, yeah, they were right and I was wrong. But at the time, there weren't that many informations. I mean, I'm talking about December when China had reported, a few hundreds cases of this unknown pneumonia, and people were already panicking. And I was saying, oh, come on, guys, why are you doing this? This is pathetic. You're not virologists. You don't know what this is. Turns out I was the wrong guy.
I was right there, man. I was, thinking the same exact thing. So tell me, what are your views on vaccines?
Well, in Italy, vaccines are mandatory.
Interesting.
Most of them are. Like the overwhelming majority of vaccines are. I have all my vaccines. I've never took the flu shot, though. I don't know why. Maybe because I like to stay home a couple of weeks per year. I mean, I can get over the flu in a couple of days, 3, 4 days, but I get to stay home 10 more days and rest and recover. So that's not bad for me. Vaccines, yeah, probably a vaccine is what will save us in the end. I'm not saying that this virus will destroy humanity, but this is only an opinion because I'm not a virologist or a doctor. So this is just my personal opinion. I don't think this virus, I hope this virus will not lead to our extinction. But without a vaccine, it's going to be very hard to go back to normal life. I mean, you will never be sure the virus is gone. That's my opinion.
So you believe that you're on board with Bill Gates when he says we have to vaccinate every single person on this.
That will be awesome. That will be awesome.
Okay. So on that note, what are your views on conspiracy theory?
If you look at human history, epidemics are a very common occurrence. We've had the Black Plague epidemic in the 14th century, which coincidentally enough started in Italy. At least the biggest outbreak started in Italy. I don't think they had biolabs in the 14th century. I don't think China had any experience. The Qing Empire had any experience with viruses. I don't think they were dealing with it. Yeah, the virus came from Asia. That's true, but I don't think the Chinese dynasties of the late Middle Ages had any expertise with viruses. So yeah, it could have. I mean, they say, according to the stuff I'm reading, the virus doesn't look like it's artificial, but there's no guarantee it didn't make it out of a lab because somebody was, I don't know, experimenting on it. But if you look at history, recorded history, you see that pandemics are normal occurrence in human history. They've happened for centuries, thousands of years.
Interesting. So
At this point, I don't see what different it does. I mean, let's assume tomorrow we find out that China created the virus and purposely unleashed it. What's going to change for, say, me here in Lombardy? Well, nothing's going to change in my job, in my life. People are still going to stay on a lockdown. People are still going to wear masks. It will not make any difference at this point.
you know that actually brings me into my next question. So tell me, truthfully, deep down, what is your gut feeling about all this? What's going on with the virus in society and all the things in between?
My biggest fear is that the economic consequences will be much worse than the actual damage caused by the virus. I think it's easier to create a vaccine, to discover a vaccine for coronavirus than fix the whole economic meltdown that we are all jumping into with no parachute, unfortunately. Remember, we are still paying the consequences of the 2007 crisis, and we are jumping into another one. So 12 years were not enough. It wasn't a time long enough to heal the wounds of the 2007 Great Recession. So imagine what the consequences will be this time.
That's right. The recession back in 2007 hit Italy pretty hard, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And that led to suicides, protests, social unrest, crime rates skyrocketing, talking about robberies, for example, or thefts, burglaries, for all sorts of reasons. Criminals are criminals, but someone who steals food because he's starving, they are people who are, it's like cornering a tiger. You give them two choices, surrender or attack. So we should prevent that. And when I started working as an EMT in 2010, I was a volunteer actually. One of the first calls I got, I remember it was August 2010. I don't remember the day. One of the first call was a 40 years old man who lost his job, who jumped under a train.
Jesus. Did he live? Did he get cut in half?
In more than half. But yeah, it didn't live. And now it's starting to happen again. It is news of 2 days ago that a businessman in southern Italy hanged himself over debts and the crisis generated by coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah, you see, that's another thing about the coronavirus is, I mean, we've had some suicides over here. I mean, there's been a lot. We had a 16-year-old girl at the very beginning of this. Actually, she couldn't take the social distancing and killed herself. We had a doctor in New York. She killed herself. She said she was overwhelmed by it. So the thing is with this coronavirus, sure, there's a lot of people that are going to die from the coronavirus, but the ramifications of what a virus does to a society is going to be insurmountable to the numbers that we're going to get from COVID. And I'm talking about suicide numbers. I'm talking about miscarriages as well. Stress like this has been paramounted, and we've seen it in an entire century. So I think we're going to see a lot of resurgences of deaths that are going to be related just to the environment alone, and it's a huge tragedy. And so I can understand where you're coming from, the fear that you have, seeing the things that you have. From being in the recession, for being an EMT, the robberies and stuff. We're getting in darker times now. Like you said, it's getting better, and I really hope it does. But I can understand your fear that you wouldn't want it to get to that point, and it may get to that point. So I appreciate your all your answers, your honesty. I appreciate your the work that you do. You're a very intelligent and kind and humble person. We need more people like you in the world. So thank you. I just have one last question for you. What have you heard about the Pope?
The Pope?
The Pope. What have you heard about him?
What do you mean?
Just in general, have you heard any news about him or what's going on?
What I know about not direct the Pope, yeah, he's been praying, of course. It's his job to pray for humanity, I guess.
I hope so.
The church itself is using all its charity organizations, which in Italy are known as Caritas. It's a Latin word for charity. They are actively and efficiently helping tens of thousands of Italian families that are literally bankrupt and with no money to buy food for the children. So it's good that at least the church is still there, despite it doesn't really matter if you are a religious person or if you are anti-clerical. When it comes to donating food packages for the poor, they don't care what your religion is or what the religion of the poor is. So it's good that they are helping people. At least they are donating money to our healthcare system, to the civil protection, to buy masks, suits for us. So it's good that you're helping. I appreciate it. Even though last time I went to church, we had another currency.
Oh, and that's interesting. Well, yeah, I'm glad they're helping out. No, I know it's kind of a weird, out of the blue, ambiguous question. The reason why I ask is because you're coming from Italy, and a couple weeks ago, I came across a article that was from France originally about the Pope being under house arrest, and that was on March 21st, 2020. I don't have the article. I wish I could provide it to you guys, and it would be really hard pressed to find it. If anyone does have it, that would be really cool. I just wanted to see from your perspective. But other than that, like I said, thank you so much for coming on here, donating your time. Now I would like to turn it over to Sir Galahad, if you're there, sir, or open it up to the floor for anybody who has any questions related to Jackson. All right, Sen, thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, thank you, Jackson. That was great, fascinating. Thank you, Magical Bum. Excellent job on the interview. Really, really well done. Hopefully you'll continue to step in, alternate with me and Shogun, or, me. Until whenever, but that was great. I would like to ask maybe one or two questions. I'm sure other people have some as well. So what concerns me are, I'm a healthy, very healthy, relatively young man, so my statistical chance is fairly good. But what concerns me personally as an athlete and so forth is the reports that being infected, and I did ask you about this a bit before, but I still want to hear your response again. That even if you're infected, you don't even show symptoms, asymptomatic, that you can develop permanent severe lung damage. And people talk about a ground glass effect in the lung, scarring in the lungs. And you also hear about testicular issues, people having fertility issues perhaps, or even impotence issues I've heard, and other forms of lasting damage. So have you been told anything about that? Can you confirm or deny that, or tell us anything about what kind of like long-term effects it has for people who are able to recover?
We don't have enough in Italy. We don't have enough data for that because the people are healing every day. Thousands of people are getting better every day as they're getting tested and they're testing negative. So we usually have more healed people who record every day than new cases, and that's a very good downtrend. But we don't know yet what the implications are long term. At least from what I'm reading from Italian medical news and news in general, they're trying to play a safe game because they don't want to make the same mistake as they did a couple months ago, like underestimating it, then overestimating it, and then underestimating it again. What I know is that asymptomatic people, so people with no symptoms, they are walking grenades or walking atomic bombs. That's what my doctor said. You are a walking atomic bomb. Because in east of Lombardy, there's the region of Veneto. That's the region of Venice. They found an outbreak in a very small town. And what the regional government did was, as usual, surround the town with police, army, and military police and the gendarmerie and test everybody. If you moved, they tested you. They found out that over 40% of the people of the town were positive with no symptoms. And those were the people who were spreading the disease because sick people tend to stay home. But if you have no symptoms and you don't know that you're sick, you're going to work, you're going to the pub, you're going to the cinema, to the theater, you're walking down the street, meeting people, kissing people, shaking hands. So that's how the disease spread across Italy and Lombardy in particular, with people with no symptoms. Because if you see someone sneezing, even before coronavirus, I'm pretty sure that your reaction will be to step aside because you don't want to, smell and may possibly drink someone else's sneeze. But if you see someone with no symptoms, no sneezing, no coughing, you have no actual reason to step aside or stay away from him. That's exactly how the virus is spread in Lombardy. So I don't know about the long-term consequences, but I know that people who think, I'm pretty sure I'm fine, I don't have the virus, could be wrong. Not because they are making any mistake, but because this is just how this virus works.
Okay, thank you. I might ask one or two more if that's okay. I'm not sure if I missed it or if we covered it yet, but what do you take on the debate between it being, on the one hand, a natural illness, and on the other hand, perhaps something that may have either escaped or been released or engineered, or a bioweapon or some kind of engineered virus? Do you have a belief on whether it's natural or whether it is totally or partially man-made or engineered?
Well, we know for a fact that in human history, there have been many much more dangerous viruses that led to the death of tens of millions of people. One of the most recent ones was the polio virus in the 50s, and the Black Plague in the Middle Age, for example. They were not engineered because we lacked, no nations had the technology to engineer a virus and create it in a lab. That doesn't mean that natural viruses cannot be, catched. I don't know how it works, but I guess you have to find the virus and catch it and then play with it. And by accident, it escapes from a lab. That it could happen, but I don't know if that actually happened. That's a problem. I'm not claiming, I don't have a real opinion on that because I don't have enough information and sources to form an opinion around that. But I know for a fact that China is a dictatorship that censors the news. It prevents its people from living a free life. These are facts, but we knew about that even before coronavirus. So I don't know why we are so surprised that China lied about something and is perhaps hiding something from us. We knew that before. Can't hear you.
Okay, so if I'm not sure if we can hear Galahad. We can't hear you right now. If you could please rejoin, that probably hopefully I will fix it. So I wanted to ask you about a test, a COVID and I want to talk about your test. You said that you ended up with the antibodies. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. They tested me over a week ago. Yeah, 10 days ago. And well, it was too late anyway, because they should have tested me in late February when I first got exposed to COVID patients. But well, regardless. So they said, you've been summoned to take a test. So they tested me, and according to the results, which I do not really understand because I'm not a doctor, they say the number of antibodies in my blood suggests that I've been infected by the virus, that for sometimes I was asymptomatic, but that it's quite possible that right now I'm negative to the virus. But I don't know yet, because that's the blood testing. The real test to find out if you have the virus or not, it's a different test.
Okay, so you're not worried about doing that test right now, like?
No.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad. So Galahad, you back?
Yeah, sorry, I guess maybe I disconnected or you couldn't hear my last question. To repeat it, was is it true, or do you believe it to be the case that when you are infected, you develop antibodies and then would be protected from reinfection by an immunity, an acquired immunity? Or is it the case that you can actually become infected multiple times, perhaps like over and over again?
I've seen, I've been dealing with cases of people who were tested negative, and after 1 to 2 weeks, they got reinfected again. Now, there are two possibilities. So, one, the tests are faulty, and they are to a certain degree. They're not perfect. They're not 100%. When you take a test, there is a 5% chance that it's going to be either a false positive or a false negative. So that means that out of 100 people you test, for 5 people you could get a wrong result. And if it's a false positive, well, the guy's going to spend a month locked up in his home. But if it's a false negative, well, the guy's going out and spreading the disease more and more and more. The other chance is that antibodies are not working as they're supposed to. But I don't think there are enough cases right now worldwide to make a study about that. And that's probably the reason why there are no real comprehensive studies about reinfections. But like I said, I've seen cases of people who tested negative, and then got reinfected, or showed the symptoms again after 1-2 weeks.
And I guess this is a bit of a side note, or not exactly, but we mentioned it, right? What do you think about the economic impacts of this and the broader social impacts for civilization going forward, right? Because, of course, there's the illnesses, the reinfections, the deaths, but now we have all these people out of work, entire businesses closed down that are not going to reopen, and all the other ripple effects on trade and food supply and so forth. So do you have any general comments about the non-medical, social, and cultural aspects of what this might do in the long run to this society?
Oh, indeed. I've been reading the reports of Italian economic authorities, even European Union authorities. The prediction is that Italy's GDP will collapse by 10% this year, and that unemployment will go from 9% to 17%. Consider that during the first days of the emergency in late February, the stock market, or maybe it was the first week of May, the stock market of Milan collapsed by 18%. And that was the biggest drop since ever. Not even during the war. The stock markets collapsed by 18%. So I'm pretty sure that the economic consequences will be much harder to deal with than the epidemic itself. Because once you teach people to wear a mask, wear gloves, and keep distances, it isn't a big deal. It doesn't take a lot of science to do it. It's much more complicated to fix a 60 million people nation and provide them food, home, jobs. Some people say it's not the government's job to provide homes, work, and food. I can agree to some extent, but when you have 60 million people and 30 million and one are starving or with no jobs, that's how the French Revolution started. So that's how all revolutions generally start, with a number of unsatisfied and starving people are too many to be dealt with. And that's what scares me most, because that's when people become violent. And we know where it leads to.
Right. And in terms of the vaccine, if they develop a vaccine, is that going to be a solution really? Because I believe there's multiple strains. The strains could evolve or mutate further. Do you think that, say they came up with a vaccine in 9 months or 6 months, is that going to be the beginning of the end of the problem, or is that too optimistic?
I don't really have an opinion on that, because I don't have enough information, and I'm not qualified enough to say what I think will happen. What I hope will happen is that the virus, as some researchers have suggested, but they're theories, they're not proven facts, is that the virus will eventually adapt itself like the common flu, and that we will easily find a vaccine for every year's strain of the virus. Hopefully, I hope they're right. I hope those studies are right, and that we will simply learn to live with it. I mean, the flu initially, in human history, the flu initially killed millions of people because we had no antibiotics, we had no medicine, no paracetamol. So it was very common for children to die for the common flu not too many years ago. We're not talking about the Stone Age. We're talking about the 19th century. What I hope is that coronavirus, COVID-19, will become like the common flu, and that we will simply deal with it with 10 days home and drink maybe a cup of hot tea, some hot beverages, and that's it. That's how we deal with the flu.
Interesting. Oh, sorry if I'm interjecting between your Galahad. I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but I mean, this obviously sounds like what you would do for a flu shot, right? But you're basically saying that, like, that experts are saying that it's going to normalize, and that we're going to probably treat it like every year kind of vaccine shot. Now, do you think that if that comes to be, like, it does become normalized and they brush it off, oh, the world's saved, that we would be probably forced to get vaccines every single year, and maybe have to take 10 days off from everybody?
Well, it's up to our choices. Some people here don't get the flu shot every year all over the world, and some people die because they don't have the flu shot. I'm talking about very old people or very rare complications of the common flu. Even for meningitis, there is a vaccine. And not many years ago, 3 years ago, we had an epidemic of meningitis in a town not far from here. It didn't make the news for some reason, but about 30 people died in less than 1 week, and they were young people. Because meningitis it makes no difference between all the young people. Once it's in your body and you fail to identify it, or you think it's a flu, you're basically already dead, because you have less than 24 hours to go to the hospital and get treatment. So it's only a few studies, a few opinions by virologists and scientists that hope, they claim, but I think they're hoping as much as I do, that what will happen to coronavirus is a normalization. So we'll learn to live with it, possibly. I will surely get a vaccine if they find one in time.
I see. Yeah. See, I can definitely see that. It's just people who are anti-vaxxers, will say that, well, they're already afraid of one vaccine. They think that one vaccine is the one that's going to give them, the nanobots and stuff like that. When I mean they, I mean me. Okay, I don't want to get the vaccine, and I mean that's another discussion for another time, that we can probably have one at the roundtable Discord server where everyone's welcome. Just throwing a promo out there, I guess. But I guess my fear is what I'm trying to state is that a lot of people are just thinking it's just going to be a one-time deal. where it might be a permanent thing, right? We get injected over and over and over again because in Italy, you said it's mandatory. Now, the flu shots that those people that aren't getting and they're dying from, that's a flu shot. I don't think it's mandatory. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if it was mandatory,
it's not mandatory.
Okay, but if it was mandatory, they definitely would have gotten it, right? Yearly checkup. Oh, here's your shot.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
If it's mandatory, yeah.
Okay, I don't want to hog the floor because I don't know if anybody else has any questions, so I'll open it back.
Is there anyone else who would like to take the opportunity to ask Mr. Jackson a question? All right, well, if not, this is a fairly basic question, but may be important. Can you give us some, I'm a frontline worker, and I've also received a small amount of pandemic training in terms of the proper use of, protective equipment and so forth. But for those of the audience who have not, and, say the infection gets worse or is bad in their area or doesn't go away, and they haven't had proper instruction, can you give the people listening some tips on how to stay safe if they're going back out of quarantine, how to use what equipment they should wear, like what should people be putting on ideally when they're leaving the house? Can you give people some tips about how they can try and protect themselves?
Oh, well, the most powerful weapon is staying away from people. And it sounds stupid, but in fact, that's how you avoid it. The virus is in the people. So if you stay away from people, that's a guarantee you will not get the virus. Unless you live with someone who doesn't stay away from people and transmits you the disease. But the second most important thing you need is a mask, of course. Preferably an FFP3 mask with a surgical mask on top of the valve. And the reason is normal surgical masks stop stuff from going out from the mask because the valve is not stopping viruses from going out. It's stopping viruses and other microorganisms from getting in. That is the purpose of the FFP3 and FFP2 mask. So if you cover the front valve, at least you will not spread any disease because you must always assume that you could be symptomatic. So it's about some solidarity. So it's try to protect yourself at the same time protect other people eventually, even the people, especially the people you love, because that's the most important part, I think. When it comes to gloves, I always wear double pair of gloves when I go to the supermarket. So when I'm done picking up the food, I take out the first pair of gloves and I open my car. Once I get home, I wash the food with specific products, of course. And when I'm done, I take off the second pair of gloves and throw it in the garbage can. I think it is excessive. I think I'm being too cautious about it. I have to admit it. But it doesn't cost me anything. And, I'd rather be not sorry for not doing it,
Do you have any insight when it comes to wearing a cloth, like a bandana, if that reduces your...
The bandanas are not, technically, no, they serve no purpose. Some here, so the government of Lombardy, some government officials said a bandana is better than nothing. But okay, and yeah, that's true to some extent, but never forget that a bandana is not a surgical mask. So it's not the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I know everybody might feel more comfortable having some sort of covering when it comes to their mouth and nose, but it does seem like from the data, it does very little to nothing.
It does not stop. That kind of tissue doesn't stop any virus at all. It doesn't even stop smoke particles. So it's wearing a bandana in an infected environment. It's completely useless. It's like breathing with your mouth wide open in front of a COVID patient. It doesn't really make any difference. It does make you feel safer, but in practice, it doesn't make you safer. I'd be dead already if I wore a bandana.
Well, okay, thank you.
No problem.
That's funny because I actually do wear a bandana. I've been using this whole coronavirus thing as an excuse to wear like a bandana, like you wear like a biker would wear. I actually do it because my mom did it when she cleaned the house, and I did it too to copy her. So it's my little connection with her. But I still look like a badass, and when you put that thing over your mask, you look like a bandito from 1963 or 1863. My bad. But even if it doesn't block anything, you're right. Absolutely, if you can get masks, you should, right? But if you don't, this is the only thing you got. Or if you're lazy like me and you don't buy a mask and you just use this, at least it's a reminder not to touch your face, right? And that can be a good source of infection as well.
Well, if you see a person on the other side of the road and you're wearing a mask, well, there are very low chances you're gonna get infected unless the wind is blowing in your face and the guy is coughing repeatedly. I mean, there have been many studies about it. We've all heard about them. Like first they say the virus stays 7 days on surfaces. Then they say no, the virus stays 3 hours on surfaces, 30 minutes in the air. This mask masks have no purpose. That's what they said here earlier. And now, if you don't wear a mask, you're gonna get a fine from the police. So even the authorities don't really know what they're doing. But we know for a fact that masks do protect you, and you should always wear one if you're going out, regardless of where you're going. Even if you're going out jogging or running, just wear it.
Yeah, if anyone's interested, like when I was in the military, a lot of the more hardcore infantrymen would practice with these kind of like gas mask apparatuses over their faces in order to be able to, have endurance with a gas mask on. So, I mean, if anybody, it can block. You can get some like cloth filters for those. So if anyone's interested in those kind of things, those are kind of fun and also protect your face, I guess. Sorry, I don't mean to go off on a tangent. This is your show, Jackson, and I wanted to ask anybody else any more questions. Anybody have a question for Jackson?
Well, thank you very much, Jackson. That was great. Everything I had hoped for in terms of some educational and informative on the ground insight into this pandemic. As my great friend and fellow Knight of the Round Table, Magical Bum, said, we are deeply grateful for you and all the other frontline workers who are confronting this dangerous illness for the benefit of others and for society. So you are certainly a hero, risking your life to save other people's lives, and we want to thank you for that. You're also a wonderful guest, so if you'd ever like to be on the podcast again, perhaps to talk about this or any other subject that you would like, you're always welcome. Just send me a DM or Shogun a DM, whatever, and we will set that up. You send it to me. And that being said, I just want to thank you for your time. I want to also thank Magical Bum for, thank you, sir. I want to thank Magical for doing the interview. You did a great job. I hope you will continue to do interviews in the future. And I think that's a good place to wrap it up for now. So again, thank you. We are the Roundtable Discord server. It's a great server where we do live podcasts, freestyle rap battles, live concerts, open discussions, formal debates, UFC fight nights. I mean, you name it, we do it all here. So join us, Google Roundtable Discord, come through Discord, check out our YouTube channel. We got about 80 podcasts, always more coming out. And we are going to be on Podcast Addict, Podbean, and many other places. TheRoundtableDiscord.com is our website. And again, you can find us through politics or conspiracy theories on Discord. So join us again.